Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Aldas Kriauciunas. I'm the Executive Director of Purdue's EMBA program, and I'm joined by one of our alums today.
So my name is Jen Dekker, and I am a recent graduate of EMBA 2019. And I'm also the CFO of Citation Homes and Citation Partners, which is a real estate development group.
So thank you for joining, and Jen and I are here to talk about our programs and answer questions that you may have to help you choose the path that's right for you. As you've been looking at your different EMBA options, these are the main types of opportunities that you have. Certainly there are online programs out there that let you stay employed and make it fit within your schedule. Weekend or evening formats are the most common EMBA formats that let you work, not terribly intrusive on your career. But what we see with those is that there's not a lot of, relatively speaking, interaction across the cohort or group, and most people live locally because of the frequency of coming to campus. The least common, but we believe the most valuable approach for an EMBA program is the residency program, which is what we have here at Purdue University. In this particular format, we come together less frequently, but when we do come together, it is for a longer period of time. So in our case, we come together about every 3 or 4 months, and when we do come together for the immersion residency, it's for 1 or 2 weeks at a time. We look and seek to have people with significant work experience, and because we are meeting just every 3 or 4 months, not only does that give you flexibility between the times on campus, but it lets us pull from a much broader geographic range. Now, some people may be local, as is Jen, but you have people in your cohort coming in from Central America, California, and distant locations. So a very nice spectrum of backgrounds. And also what's critical, and we'll talk more about this, is when classes end each day, no one's going home. You stayed at the hotel with everyone else, so your house was about 10-minute drive, 15?
Yeah, about 10 minutes. But staying at the hotel, it really allows you to put yourself in the mind state of being on campus and being in residency.
And so not only does that give you that immersion, but there's a lot that happens after classes end at 4:30 and 5, and we'll talk about that coming up on the subsequent slides. I do invite you, if you have questions during the webinar, you can use the chat feature. We'll also have time at the end of the webinar for you to ask Jen or myself any questions about the program, her experience, and any other concerns you may have. So a quick overview of Purdue University. We're celebrating our 150th anniversary. It's quite an exciting time. And Purdue was founded as a land-grant university, meaning that there's a strong connection to our students and to the community that we're embedded in. We're part of the Big Ten university system, and with that we have over 500,000 alumni around the world. We have close to 50,000 alumni from Cranmer and about 3,000 Executive MBA alumni. So while your cohort may be 25 or 30 people, you're part of this much broader Boilermaker Nation, as we call it. And one thing I've learned, my undergrad is not from Purdue and yours is not, but I've learned if you wear Purdue clothing, people will talk with you. Purdue alumni are very loyal, and so they'll stop, they'll talk with you, airports, where have you, if you're traveling. And so you have that immediate connection with other people that are wearing Purdue and or have that background. Purdue, not just focused on the US, but it is truly a global brand. We have alumni chapters in 50 countries around the world. I've traveled a lot, I know you have as well. If people don't know Purdue, they know Neil Armstrong, and the 50th anniversary of the moon landing is coming up. So there's a lot about Purdue that people around the world know, and that immediately helps you form a connection. While we're focused today on the MBA program, keep in mind that Purdue is a leader in 200 plus major areas. So that offers you a range of resources as a student, access to libraries, to centers, entrepreneurship being one particular area. Purdue just came out that they were number 12th in the world for commercialization of patents in 2018. So there's a lot happening that you can have access to. In the remaining slides, we'll talk about the main things that people often want to know, which is about the classmates that they'll be working with, this blended format that we have, which is quite unique, the benefits to you, how to work with your company to make this happen. With the residency format, you cannot do this program without your company knowing. You can't be away for the 1 or 2 weeks. And that's critical because we think it also gives you an opportunity to have some important discussions within your organization. And then we'll end with some next steps to help you find the right fit for you. So here's a quick snapshot of just some of the companies represented over the past 3 years. I know some were definitely in your cohort. And we present this to show that truly one can work in any type of organization. It can be financial, it can be high tech, it can be real estate and construction, it can be not-for-profit. You have some not-for-profits as well in your cohort. It really doesn't matter what organization you're in. What we're looking for is what are your future goals, what are those new opportunities that you're seeking, and the willingness to learn from people from a range of backgrounds. That's the richness that we have with the different types of functions, industries, and organizations represented. Taking a deeper dive on the people that we've had in our cohort over the past 3 years, then they'll have Jen talk a bit more about her background and her cohort. So we require a minimum of 5 years work experience to be in our program. Average is 15, and we choose year 5 because that's the point we see people start having more management and or leadership responsibilities in their career. And that's important because there's a lot in our program that deal with the people side of an organization. Either leading people, being a direct manager, and until you've dealt with that, call it HR component, the world looks very different. I like to say there's a lot of smart 22-year-olds out there, but until they deal with the people side, the gains that they would have from an executive MBA would be limited. In terms of positions, it really matches the work experience. So we have people from middle manager on up. About 10% of our students are entrepreneurs within the program, and probably another 20+% seeking to be entrepreneurs at some point in the future. In terms of the industries represented, because of the geographic range that we have in the program, no one company, no one industry dominates our cohort. I think in your case, you only had one company with 2 employees in the program, and everyone else they were representing their company. So again, that richness of background, and as you see here, a nice balance of industries represented. And then in terms of geographic background, about a quarter of the students live in Indiana, about a quarter international, and the rest spread throughout the country. For the traditional EMBA that Jen graduated from, a little bit heavier on the Indiana and Midwest representation, and then our global executive MBA certainly higher on the international representation. So Jen, you could talk a little bit of how you fit within these pie charts and what your cohort was like.
Sure. So within my cohort, I fell at the lower end of the work experience. So I entered the program with either 7 or 8 years of work experience. I think that 18 months were right on a transition to the next gap. And then as far as age range, I jockeyed for the second youngest in the program. So with the age dynamics, we went from kind of mid to late 20s all the way into early 60s for our specific program. And one of the reasons why I say that or highlight that is we had people who were at very different stages in their careers. Some had changed careers a few times, some had changed companies a few times. People were at different places in their ladders, and what that did was offer a really great opportunity to see things from a 360 perspective. I was thrust into a management role a little bit faster in my company than what was originally planned, and so as far as a position, I sat in a C-suite much earlier in my career than what would normally happen. That's also a product of being a small business. For us, we had people from a very diverse set of industries. We had a number of manufacturing, some engineers, and a lot of very technical focus, though not super heavy into the finance sector, but we had a lot of people with really, really, really incredible knowledge of mathematics and financial concepts. So it was always a very interesting approach when you get into something that's drastically different than that, such as organizational behavior and HR. So for me, being someone technically focused, hearing maybe an HR director's take on employee compensation and motivation was really helpful. And so one of the things that Purdue does phenomenally in this program is they really pick the right mix in your cohort to make sure that you are getting a different perspective from each classmate. And I think as much as you will learn from any of your professors, you will learn more from the people around you in the room. The cohort mentality and structure really, I believe, is what makes this program unique and adds so much value to it. And I think Aldas is definitely the architect here of a lot of the cohorts. As far as geographic background, we had a few people coming from out of country, or some who had recently relocated from out of country to the United States, as well as our class, being traditional, had a stronger component from the Midwest, as Aldas spoke to. But we also had a few coming from West Coast, a few coming from East Coast, which of course, when you're doing group work, working across time zones, you really learn time management very quickly in those first modules.
Thank you. So looking at the curriculum, so the curriculum for our two EMBA programs is quite similar. We break our courses out into three categories. One are the functional aspects that make a company or organization run. Then we have the environmental, which I define as the environment within which organizations are working and things that help the company or organization work better with its environment. And then the integrative topics. Those are that build from the functional and environmental and add their own set of concepts or theories to it. And in each of these cases, you're really having to understand a wide range of functions and the environment within which a firm operates. Now I'd like to do a deeper dive on our format of blended learning, and I'll ask Jen to comment on a few aspects. You can also see her front and center in the photo. It may be hard to tell, but they are in Rio, Brazil, on a bit of a cloudy day at the Christ the Redeemer statue. So it's a part of the international residency that they have in the traditional EMBA program. So in both of our programs, they are 19 months from start to finish. We always start with the orientation or launch week here in West Lafayette, Purdue University. During that time, you meet the members of your cohort. You start working with the members of your first study team. We in the program put the teams together to make them diverse yet balanced, because we've learned if we leave it up to the students, they will tend to migrate towards people with a similar background, and that defeats the whole purpose of having people from around the world in your program. You'll also learn about the technology platforms we use, since part of the content is online. And then you'll take 2 classes for each of the courses of the first module. So it's very much an in-person foundation, because our view is that technology can be a great complement, but there's some things you can do only in person that you can't do through online. After this launch orientation week is done at Purdue, people travel home, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 15 hours, as the case may be. And then you start what we call the pre-residency or online preparation. During that time, you do the readings faculty have assigned in the syllabus. You'll watch videos faculty have prepared. You'll have individual and team-based assignments, a weekly team meeting. You also get the assignments and feedback from the faculty during that time. So what I emphasize, one is that aside from your weekly team meeting, maybe twice a week on occasion, everything else is asynchronous. You choose when within the week you do the readings, the assignments, and so on, whereas a team meeting, of course, you're all together at the same time, with assignments typically due Sunday evening. So it gives you that flexibility also if you have travel for sometimes 2 or 3 weeks. If you're in a weekend or evening program, you really can't participate, where this gives you that flexibility. Also, what I'll mention is that it's not a self-study, or maybe you want to comment on that, because I know besides your weekly team meetings, you also, each cohort had a WhatsApp group where faculty and staff are not part of. So you're sharing information as well. So maybe talk about that, what that pre-residency, a little bit more from your perspective.
Yeah, so within the pre-residency, going into the first module, my cohort had made some really great and strong relationships outside of just maybe our first study teams. And so we went into the first pre-residency all communicating on a very regular basis with an entire cohort. And I think that's something that was very beneficial and maybe slightly more unique to our cohort than maybe others. But within those team environments, you're definitely meeting on a regular basis. You're discussing, you're communicating about homework assignments. You have some homework that will be group and some that will be individual. And so there is a more heavily probably balanced towards group work in some of those first modules as you're learning some of those foundational or functional courses as well. And you're really able to lean on maybe who may ever come up as a subject matter expertise person. So for example, in module 1, I have an accounting and finance background. So having an accounting course, I was helping and assisting a lot more where on another team, I have a very strong operations person, but you kind of start to pinpoint and learn and grow from others in addition to the coursework. The structure was very nice in that, within your team, some people may be weighted heavily where they do all their work in the first 3 days and they might even do all their reading on a treadmill. And then there are other people like myself who were waiting until a little bit later in the week to be able to get through work, apply myself to my schoolwork, and then was wrapping things up towards the end of the week and submitting maybe sometimes down to that last minute. But you really do have a team environment assisting you. Professors are on demand for asking questions, but really truly learning together as a cohort and as a team, you see quite a bit more in the way that the pre-residencies are structured.
Excellent, thank you. Then with that pre-residency or foundation building set, you come to campus. That campus may be West Lafayette, Indiana, it may be Rio, Brazil, depending on the program and module that you're in. During that time, you'll have your classes, company visits, guest speakers, career management support, and we'll talk more about that, and then social events. I know your cohort did a basketball game. I know we have a photo coming up. Some do baseball games, other off-campus events, as a way to help form those bonds. So you're getting to know people in the classroom and outside, and that's the benefit of being together for multiple days at a time. After the residency, you return home. You have 1 week to prepare for exams, and then exams are over a 9-day period. They're asynchronous, meaning you choose when you take which exam. They are typically timed, 2, 3, or 4 hours. You go to the learning platform Blackboard, download the exam, write your answers, and then upload your answers. And then with the exam period done, you'll typically have a 1 week break, and then you start the next pre-residency with new study groups. And that's important because not only do we form your first study group, we form all the subsequent ones, but we keep changing them initially to make them diverse yet balanced. And then moving forward, we keep that diverse aspect, but then we're looking to see who you haven't worked with whom to create as many new ties during your time in the program. So I would venture to say you never had 2 groups that were exactly the same. Some repeats towards the end probably, but again, you're trying to work with as many different people during your time in the program. So the other question for you, I think people understand the residency immersion, but what was the exam period like? Because I'm sure your undergrad, you went to some big halls to do your exams, as did I. So doing exams online is a bit different for most people.
It is, and I think the important thing that I figured out in Module 1 was that I needed a quiet place where I could be 100% removed, and for me, that was not my home. Because everything's always there, and you're thinking of 100 other things that could be done. So finding the spot that's right for you to be able to sit down and have a dedicated 2, 3, 4-hour time period per exam. The other was, looking ahead during that week off in between and figuring out when during those 9 days you will have the time to dedicate. Some of the exams were, download the exam. It's the first time you're seeing the exam, 4 hours to complete. Others you knew ahead of time, or you had the material to be able to study, and then it was just a matter of download, complete, submit. but finding the balance of when that works. And then I think also one of the important things was planning for the fact that you can't always plan for life. So having some built-in days and not having it be that the last 2 days of the exam period, you're trying to stack in 4 exams back to back. They are, 4 hours, as you can imagine, is kind of a mentally taxing exam time, and then trying to focus and shift to another. I know some of the feedback that we had gotten from previous cohorts was, don't try to jam 2 exams in one day, and I would definitely say that that is true. So throughout those 9 days, trying to find when and where that works for you and plan ahead is maybe the best thing. And I think that's probably the most true thing about the entire residency is time management, looking at your pre-residency assignments, your in-residency assignments, and also exams, and finding a way to have all of that fit in a manner that you still stay sane too.
One thing I'll mention is you never have more than 4 exams in an exam period. The exam period covers 2 Saturday, Sunday weekends. So if people find it difficult to do an exam during the work week, you can do 2 the first weekend to the last weekend. And again, that gives you that work-life balance that is a cornerstone of our program. So I mentioned we have 2 executive MBA options. I'll do a bit of a deeper dive now, and then we'll go through one then the other. So the traditional executive MBA is the one that Jen graduated from. And I call it traditional because for most people, it's traditional to come to the same campus each time for their residency. So here Jen came to West Lafayette, and her cohort members, 5 times, about once a quarter. And then the last time they came together was a 2-week residency abroad. As we saw, they were in Rio the first week, and then the second week in Santiago, Chile. In fact, we had a photo on that a little bit earlier as well. The bonus element of this traditional EMBA is that they have the workshop style immersion electives, where not only do they get to suggest ideas for the electives, but then they rank order a set of options, and then their higher ranked ones, they get 3 of those. And we don't keep the whole cohort together for that. We split you up into subgroups. Do you remember which ones you took maybe?
Yes, so I took game theory, I took AI lean manufacturing, and then I also, I was lucky enough to be able to find the extra time in my schedule to take an additional week for another international residency program. So Dr. David Sporman takes a class to Paris each year for spring break, which was a phenomenal class on international marketing and marketing across cultures. So that was my 3rd elective, which allowed me some free time during one of our on-campus residencies, which was nice because it fell during our capstone project, which I believe Aldas will be talking more about in just a bit.
So, and in that, well, what's a point of differentiation is Purdue is the only EMBA program in the world where the students actually can suggest ideas for electives. I'm not aware of any other program that does that. Then our global EMBA, in that case, we have 5 residencies. Each one is 2 weeks. We go to a different country or pair of countries. The bonus there, as I like to call it, is not only do you get the learning immersion that you do in the traditional, but much more of the cultural and business immersion. By spending at least a week in a country, you will get to understand the culture through your own activities and those that we in the program develop. Also the business immersion. We do 1 or 2 company visits per week. There, it's not only a company visit, but it's the interaction with top management, getting to understand their challenges, their business models, and why it works for them. Maybe a parallel is when we did the Kingston Winery in Chile, and anyone can go to a winery anywhere.
Right.
But what made that unique, you want to talk about the case prep that you did?
Yes, so with traveling to Kingston, we were able to look at their operations, and they were making some kind of strategic business decisions of, do we go with option A, which I think might have been organic farming, option B, expanding some production, and I cannot remember what option C was at the time, but we had a few different things that we could look at, and then we were able to really meet with company executives and be able to give them a strong proposal about their business. And in our case, the the case with Kingston Winery is actually, is it Stanford Business School?
Yeah.
It's a Stanford Business School case, and so we were able to actually see the outcome of what they ended up deciding on each one of those. That was a very neat, I believe now there would be a second section in the future of that case as well. But it was really neat to be able to have us work through a real life problem, being able to walk through the farm when we're seeing what they're talking about with biodynamic farming, and really have that hands-on, where a lot of times throughout the all your residencies, the number of cases that you'll cover, you have, of course, your imagination at play of putting yourself in the scenario. However, with the Kingston Winery case, you're able to really immerse yourself, and so it we use immersion a lot in describing this program, but there are true immersions in each one of those residencies.
Thank you. And then also with the IMM Global EMBA, you earned 2 MBAs, one from Purdue and one from our Dutch partner. In terms of commonalities, both of our programs are a General Management MBA, and here I've listed again some of the courses that we saw earlier. And our view is that the general manager needs to have this understanding of this range of topics so that they can ask better questions, make better decisions, pull upon the right people to address a problem, and be able to have that holistic view in terms of what they're doing. We provide coaching through executive coaches during your time in the program, and there's clearly the networking, not just within the cohort, but through other activities that you can get to meet other alumni. And then in both classes, we have cohort-based electives in addition to the immersion that we described. In that case, the whole cohort takes that elective, but what they are can change year by year. I think you had M&A, negotiations.
I want to say corporate governance.
Corporate governance would have been the third one. And then in each case also, they work on a consulting project towards the end of the program as well. It's a chance to take what you've learned in the program, integrate it with your own work experience, and address a business problem for an external client. Not only does that push you to take a very broad idea, because I'm sure yours was, most of the terms are usually a 3-year project for 20 people, so you have to scope it down. That's the first challenge, and then execute on that particular project. In terms of the timeline for the program, it starts this September. So again, we have the launch week here. Residencies 1 and 2 are 2 weeks long, and that's because it's a higher workload, higher credit load at the start of the program, and then it drops from residencies 3 through 6. I tell people, and tell me if I've been right or wrong, I say about 25 hours per week in the first 2 modules when you're not on campus, and then dropping to about 15, 17.
Yeah, I would say that's about right. Now, some people, I think across our cohort, that's probably a very good average. There were some that studied a little less, some that studied a little bit more, and ultimately there's also a big mix, I think, about whether having employer support is a really beneficial thing. For me, I was able to do some of my studying while I was at work as well during some downtimes or breaks, which was a really nice component. Others did their work 100% outside of the office, and so they were working and spending a little bit more time maybe in their evenings or early mornings, or a lot of our books also, you can find the audiobook on it, so listening to it while you're doing whatever you may be doing in the morning. So I think there, as you get into some of the later modules, and especially if you have an area of expertise, that module might be a little bit lighter for you, but I would say at minimum probably about 15 hours.
Okay. And one thing that you'll notice that for the residency 6 is the international trip. And again, unique to our program is that you, the cohort, get to choose where you'll go across a range of options. So you can go to China as a cohort, everyone goes together. You can do Chile and Brazil for South America, and then there's a range of countries in Europe. And so, again, it's a way that you as the student is helping to co-create the program. It's a way that the program is nimble to the interests of each cohort. So the year before your cohort, they went to Spain and Belgium and Netherlands, and a year from now we're going to Spain and Italy.
Okay.
So again, it varies the location year by year, which I think is a pretty neat thing. And here as well, I think we're the only program where the students choose the location that they're going to go to. If there are others that do it, it's relatively few and far between. And then based on criteria that students have shared with us, we've put together this vision chart looking at affordability as an inverted scale, Purdue in the most affordable programs, and certainly at our price point, no one provides close to what we do. Alumni network size, as we talked about, Purdue 500,000 or so around the world. In terms of format, we're one of the few, certainly in the region, with a residency format. And then the size of the bubble, the number of electives that we offer. One thing I'll focus on with that is our electives are only for our EMBA students in that particular cohort. We do not have people from other programs coming in, and so it truly is dedicated to the people in that group. And why that's important, as Jen has pointed out, the ties that form quickly are very strong, and I think that's a critical aspect. And there's a philosophy, hopefully it's coming across, of learning from each other. As you said, over half of the learning. And so we only admit people, and then we encourage that peer-to-peer learning. And so we have seen and heard that if we were to bring in from other programs, those people may not have that philosophy. And as well, I'll mention, and you and your peers have mentioned this as well, is that you're all supporting to make sure everyone finishes. That helping each other is quite amazing to watch for a group that did not know each other in September, how quickly you realize that we all want to help each other complete and learn in the program.
I think that is one thing that he says, not just complete, but learn. And so I think there were a lot of us that, you might have gotten your homework done early in the week, but then it was a matter of not just being done, but having a full-scale understanding, because each one of us, in my cohort specifically, was seeking an MBA, not for the letters on a resume, but for the knowledge that we needed in our business. And so I think that is a differential of, it's not just that we got an assignment complete or we got a class complete or, yay, I got my degree. It was, I have the requisite knowledge I need to now move forward in this course, in my business, and in my career trajectory.
That's a good point, the requisite knowledge. I tell people, if all you want are the credentials of an MBA, there are cheaper, easier ways to do it. This is not an easy way to do it, but I think you get what you put in. And certainly in this program, the rewards, as we'll be talking about, are quite numerous. Looking at our Global Executive MBA program, it's an alliance of 6 schools from around the world. And one thing I'll point out is, while these may not be household names in the United States, they are well-known, well-respected in each of their countries and each of their regions. Many of them have a strong technology or engineering school to them, as does Purdue. So there's a common understanding of the rigor that technology and engineering programs often have, and because that was the foundation, that rigor cuts across all parts of those universities. If there's one thing that Purdue is certainly known for, it is rigor across every school. Doesn't matter the topic. Sometimes people say, oh, OBHR, that's touchy-feely. Maybe on a certain day, but there's rigor to be had, and Dr. Skolman does a very nice job of showing you the rigor and some of the paradoxes you have in your organization as well. And it cuts across TIAS, also known for innovation, Tianjin University, the oldest modern university in China, FGV Abate, a well-known brand throughout Brazil, Politecnico di Milano, the leading engineering technology school in Italy, and ISM Executive School in Lithuania, not just a leader in Lithuania, but the top school in the whole region for business education. So all of us in these schools work together. They all host the residencies. So, as I like to say, it's not just tourism, but it's far more than that, because you have a local partner that understands education, that understands business, and connects us to those businesses where they are located. In terms of the format and the calendar, Here's a well-launch week at Purdue. Then we spend 2 weeks in the Netherlands. Next 2 weeks are split between Lithuania and Italy. And so by the end of residency 2, 1, you've been taken out of your comfort zone a bit, but also now you have a triangulation of 3 European Union countries. So it gives you a good understanding of both diversity and commonality of doing business in the European Union. Residency 3 takes us to South America, Brazil and Chile. That takes people more out of their comfort zone, I would say. And maybe comment on this next point. So people sometimes think, well, all of South America is kind of the same. How the same or different were Brazil and Chile? Because you went there as well with your cohort.
Startlingly different for me. So aside from speaking drastically different languages, in Brazil, obviously they speak Portuguese, and I believe while we were there, we learned that there is less than 5% of the population that actually speaks a second language. And so there were some significant language barriers for even class and cohort members of ours who spoke fluent Spanish. And so that you got to see some of the different issues that they may have, and at least some of our U.S. cohort members who were there, it gave them a very good idea of what it may be like for other workforce to come into the United States and not speak English. So it offered kind of a full scale for us there. Moving to Santiago, Chile, the biggest notice I saw, and obviously probably because of my real estate background and land development, was the difference in the way that the countries are set up. So Santiago seems to be very much of a planned city. I mean, everything is perfectly run on a grid, and their infrastructure is phenomenally well taken care of, which was such a contrast to Brazil, where you have these little islands up in the middle of the city, and things are just kind of moved around wherever was kind of convenient or fit. So not just from a look, but also from a feel and ease of transportation, logistics, just about everything differed between the two, where previously I thought, oh no, we're just going to be in 2 really nice, very warm places. At the time it was February in Indiana, so I was going from 20 degrees to I think 80 degrees or 90 degrees, so I was excited about the change, but then there were a number of other drastically different things between the two.
Indeed. And so part of what you'll see is we try to have contrasting countries to give you a bit more of that understanding. And there's things that you can only learn by being in these countries and not just seeing the headlines or hearing from others. Residency 4 brings the cohort back to West Lafayette. Not a stretch in terms of culture, but the curriculum continues to be more challenging, and a bit more of those integrative courses such as entrepreneurship, the consulting project and strategy. And then we end by going to China. China, for most people, furthest out of their comfort zone, but additionally, we go to 3 cities rather than 2. Most programs that go to China will do Shanghai and Beijing, but we go to Tianjin, and the benefit with Tianjin is most people have never heard of the city, so it does have 10 million people, 10 to 15 million. 300 of the global Fortune 500 companies have operations there. And it gives you, again, that triangulation. It's one of the largest port cities for China as well. So, again, variance within the location. And then we end with graduation, 2 graduations that you can attend here in West Lafayette, and then at TIAS in the Netherlands in the subsequent June. So here's a typical week on campus, and again, I have a campus in quotations. A campus, as we've seen, can be in many places around the world. So this should look very familiar to you. Breakfast and lunch provided on instruction days, 2 classes in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, with breaks between the 2 morning and afternoon classes, and typically a different topic between the morning and the afternoon to give you time to have that mental variety. By having breaks, it allows people to check emails or return a phone call as needed. And then in the evening, free evening just means we in the program haven't planned anything. It doesn't truly mean it's free. And you may be working in a case, study a project, maybe going out for dinner with your team or other members of the cohort. So talk to us, Jen, maybe first question, how long does it take you to decompress from work and family obligations when you got to the residence?
The residency. So I didn't do quite as good of a job of that in the first module. So moving to the second module, I think it was very important to kind of set clear boundaries, work, life, everything of when I'm in class, I'm in class. When I'm out, I'm out. I think the first module I went so far as to forget to set up an out of office, which was, brilliant on my part. So that first break on day one, you're kind of flooded. But I think having set those boundaries, then it became very easy, and I was surprised at how well vendors, clients, my family adapted to an overview of, hey, you know what, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. But I think having that balance allowed me to decompress faster with each module, but I do think it took some of us longer or shorter to get into that rhythm. But I'd say the breaks, a lot of times you wanted to very much be able to just take a mental break rather than even picking up emails or anything. So I know I tried to do anything that was work related during lunches and take the breaks as some mental prep time for me. And that really helped me to be able to digest the material, because going from 8:30 in the morning to 12 constantly after, a lot of us may not sit at a desk for 8 hours a day. Some of us might, but I don't sit at a desk for 8 hours a day. So the first week of module one hit me really hard. I hadn't sat and listened for that long and focused for that long in a really long time. I hadn't heard myself talk that much in a really long time. And so there were a lot of things that I needed to figure out how I was going to adjust and be able to get the most out of the lectures that were coming to me.
Okay, thank you. So here is a decision criteria looking at the Global Executive MBA. So again, affordability, alumni network, the size of the bubble, or the number of countries that we go to, and so our global EMBA does go to more countries than any other program. And then the shading captures, is it a week and evening format versus a residency format. And again, the residency, as we see, it gives you that time to, as you talked about, immerse yourself in learning, disconnect, not in quarantine, because you're still keeping in touch, but lets you shift that focus. And I've talked to people that have considered weekend or evening programs. An evening program, if it's 4 hours, you're never truly mentally shifted. Plus, you're kind of exhausted after work as well. Weekend as well, people drive in, get there at 7:55 a.m., chat for a few minutes, and they have classes during the day, and 5:05, they're in their cars going home again. Whereas here, in the evenings, a lot of activity going on.
I think it was much easier for me to plan for a residency of 2 weeks away than to plan for each weekend. I did consider the weekend program here initially as well, and every other weekend of my life for 19 months was a lot more difficult to carve out than 2 weeks here, 3 weeks, a week here each quarter.
That's one thing I hear. In particular, if people don't have a local support network, having someone come in to help once a quarter may be easier than having someone else also give up all their Saturdays or every other Saturday for a 2-year period. But here's your cohort, though you did not make this photo.
I did not make this photo.
So our program tuition is all-inclusive, truly no surprises. And so it covered the tuition, the fees, all the materials, housing in residency, both here and in any of our international locations. Once you arrive on campus, then we cover the transportation. So it may be to a company visit, and maybe when you flew from Rio to Santiago, we handle all of that. Most of the meals, as we showed, and all these other things that help you leverage the EMBA experience of social events, career services. The tuition is the same across both programs, $85,000, split into 5 equal payments, and they cover multiple calendar years, 3 years in each case. And we mention that because companies that do reimbursement is typically on a calendar year basis. So that's one thing to look and think about as you're looking at reimbursement and support from your company. Talk about the benefits to the firms. As I said up front, you cannot do this program without having a discussion with your company. And so they are going to be gaining as well as you will. Each residency, you already are gaining ideas that you can be implementing. Our surveys show the financial impact that alumni are able to provide. After graduation, we continue to have our relationship with you. We do semi-annual webinars, back-to-school events. Last week, we had a Topgolf event in Indianapolis. We talked about those consulting projects. Many of them are generated by our alumni. And then Purdue alumni clubs do a series of events as well. So there's a lot of ways that you'll continue to benefit. And then the networks. We've talked about that a fair amount already. And I'll push you just a little bit more on that, in that all the MBA programs promise to give you a network. And everyone thinks it's the same type. I would say, and I'm sure we had this conversation, I tell people our networks are different just because of the intensity of ties. So were you surprised in what form in terms of the network versus what you thought it was going to be like?
Yes. So you spend 19 months with a group of 25 to 30 people, and you expect to make friends throughout that. You expect to have a few people that you can call on for subject matter expertise. And what I found was, so my cohort ended with, I believe, 24 individuals, and there were 24 people that I would call on regularly for things. So we spoke earlier about how our group had a WhatsApp as well as a group meet, but there is probably a question a day from someone in the group with something that they're facing at work, with something that they're facing in their professional life of, hey, does anybody have any insight into this? Does someone have assistance for this? In addition, a number of our professors have become friends throughout the program as well, of having a true subject matter expertise to be able to run to. I know I run to our M&A and strategic management professor with a lot of questions when I need them. But really, truly, I mean, I've got someone now, if I have questions about Department of Defense things, whether it's because I read it in the news and I want a general understanding, or we had a gentleman from who at the time was at Cisco, who's my, I call him my chief of staff, because he's, whenever I need anything, he is kind of the go-to man. But there are a much wider variety of people. I expected to form really close friendships with 3 to 5, and I would say I formed up to 24.
Very nice, thank you. Good to hear. Career impact. So this is after the cohort after years. So what we see is that people are looking to define where they want to be 2 years after graduation. So the support that we provide is to help you identify where you want to be, create a plan, and then help you execute on that plan. So that covers what function you want to be in, what industry, what geography, and what role you'd like to have within that process. Our alumni do have different and quite positive career advancement and promotion. So some of the data is 80% of our alumni are promoted or grow their company within 2 years after graduation, and even more do so while in the program. And I read that because I know that's your case as well. So can you talk what your advancement was while you were in the program?
Yes. So while I was in the program, we acquired a few corporations, and then we also combined. So I had previously been solely over finance, and so I've now taken over finance as well as operations. So since I started off with a C in my title, there's not quite as much of that promotion, but a very strong growth of job duties in a much stronger functional area. And I can say without a doubt, without this program, I would not have the requisite knowledge to be able to be running an operations division as well. And being able to have that skill has saved my company a substantial amount of money in having one point of oversight for departments that previously worked so close together.
That's good to hear. And then salary impact as well, that we see people experiencing. So definitely positive ROI that people experience. And again, your cohort, the faculty, people in the program, and the executive coach help you move forward in that particular direction. Financing is a challenge as well. So there's 2 main buckets you can choose from. One is company support, and here we give some ideas and resources that we can provide you with our toolkit, and another called the Big Ask. We find most people receive some tuition assistance, but only about 20% are fully company funded. So do most likely plan on having some of your own finances having to be used. Start having those discussions as early as possible with your organization, and we can provide any additional information. Because ours is a all-inclusive tuition price, some companies want us to break out tuition versus room and board and materials, and we can certainly do that. Again, we'll help give you the information that you need. And keep in mind the company support could be financing or could be the time away from work. I will be honest that getting the time away from work is the #1 challenge for people to join our program. I think Jen and all of her cohort members would agree it's the best way to learn, but not all companies are going to give up their employees for 1 or 2 weeks, even though clearly it can be done, and people learn to make it balance out, with funding being the second biggest challenge. And then on the personal side, savings, loans, scholarships that we provide. And in general, what we see is that between the savings, loan, scholarship support, and company funding, people are able to cover that $85,000 cost. Kirsten Reynolds in Purdue's financial aid office is your best resource to get more information on how to navigate the financial aid process, and there you have her email. I encourage you to contact her, and she is truly a wealth of knowledge. In terms of navigating the path, if you think the EMBA is right for you, there really is no benefit in waiting to move forward. We encourage you to share your resume with us for a general review and a GMAT waiver determination. That's that first step to helping you see if this is the right fit for you. Also, we'll compare our 2 EMBA programs with up to 3 other EMBA programs of your choice. And that gives you an apples-to-apples comparison that you can use for your own research, discussion with your manager. And in that, we take about 25 criteria that, again, our applicants have said is of importance or interest to them, and we provide that along with the link that we were looking at. Have those discussions. We have today's webinar. It will be recorded, so if there's something you missed or want to go back and check on, certainly it will be posted in the coming days. We also invite you to come to campus. Our next 3 dates are the June 21st, 24th, and August 2nd. Those are what I'll call our official days. But if that doesn't work for you, you can come anytime that week. Just let us know, and we'll just make sure it's a good day for you to come. I wouldn't want you to come on a day where they're off on a company visit. Defeats the purpose of coming and visiting us on campus. Application, fairly straightforward. Essays, 2 references, transcripts, resume, and the interview. We do with myself and the second member of our admissions committee. We can do that in person or through WebEx as we're doing today. And then, as I like to say, get admitted and get ready to be challenged, because it is both a challenging and definitely a rewarding program. Here you have some of the deadlines. So July 1st, priority scholarship review, and August 1st is our general deadline or until the cohort is filled, and then you would plan to be here September 9th. So just under 3 months away. And then December 2nd for the application fee waiver for the global program. In both cases, we also waive the fee for anyone working at an NGO, anyone who's a Purdue alum, or anyone who has served in the U.S. military, either active or retired, as a way to show our appreciation for their service. And then we have the other deadlines for the global EMBA program. So my last slide captured that people can and do graduate. It is a challenge, but you can see a lot of smiles across all these photos. People in 19 months gaining a lot of that knowledge, forming new friendships, and a lot of experiences both within the U.S. and abroad as they went through the program. So again, I encourage you, we still have a few minutes. So if you want to, in the chat box, write in a question, or don't have that option and want to just unmute your mic, then I encourage you to do that as well. So as I'm waiting to see if people do have questions, let me ask Jen a few questions. So what was your research process to choose where to go to? Because 2 years ago or so, you were in the same situation that people joining the webinar are in.
So I think one of the largest things for me, coming from an accounting and finance background was that value. And so I had a friend who had gone through a weekend program and had recommended that. So I had initially started looking at the weekend program, and I actually, after speaking with one of the directors of the weekend program, he had recommended that he thought the executive program might actually be a better fit for me. So I began looking at the executive program, and that brought me around to the concept of a residency program. So from there, I compared a few other universities that would be manageable for me in terms of travel. And ultimately what I came down to was that bang for your buck or the value. And after speaking with, I was paired with a mentor who was in a current cohort and was able to ask some of those kind of deep questions of how do you manage that? How do I make this work? What do you think about this? And get into a more one-on-one discussion. And I think ultimately that tipped me over the edge towards Purdue because it seemed as though, I don't know the best way to say it. It seemed as though they really, really, truly had their project down pat, and it was tailored to the things that I really, really needed as far as education and not necessarily towards the three letters. It kind of came down to that for me, that it was one of the first times I'd heard someone say, you know, it's not the three letters or the name that's on your resume. It matters if you got the skills and that someone made sure you learned them. And so Purdue seemed like the best place for me to be able to have that occur.
Excellent, thank you. And you did a lot of research clearly before choosing. You talked about the networking maybe being a bit of a surprise. Any other surprises, that something you didn't expect in the program that hopefully a pleasant surprise?
So with my undergrad being business, I had this view of what a business school was, and it brought me back to a lot of 300-person, 150, 200 people lectures. And what I really appreciated was kind of the teacher-to-student ratio and those professorial relationships that I was able to make. Having that ability and comfort to ask a professor a question or to go to them after a lecture and go, what am I not getting and why isn't that here? I wasn't used to having quite as much of an open door in some of the more quantitative classes. I felt those in the qual things in undergrad, but not as much in the quantitative, and really being able to have someone tactically dive in with me who is the instructor, in addition to having that excellent support network of my other cohort members, was invaluable.
Excellent. So you've mentioned M&A and strategy being one professor you've gone back to. Can you share how you've already been able to maybe implement some idea? Don't give away any trade secrets, but maybe some of that impact you've already had.
Sure. So I spoke earlier about how I had received kind of a promotion or a broadening of duties, one of those being that I was then overlooking operations, but that came about largely because of a few acquisitions that we did. So I was able to ask some great questions sitting in that finance role. I had learned the things in class about how to value a company, business valuations and derivative conversations and multipliers, and so it was able to take me a little bit further in really feeling strong in my recommendation. In a small business, a lot of times you'd need to hire a consultant for a pretty large dollar amount to be able to do that, and because of our relationship with a professor, I was able to save my company a substantial amount of money by asking Jeff a number of questions, which was very beneficial. But I also, for the first time, felt very confident in what I was recommending, not just having talked to Jeff, but in the things that I had learned in class. I was much stronger making M&A recommendations for our company.
Excellent, thank you. And I see we've hit the 1 o'clock hour, so my last question, what advice would you give to others that are considering doing an executive MBA program?
Sure. So besides do it and do it at Purdue, my recommendation would be, really taking what your options are, and as they have, Purdue will offer you kind of a cross comparison of our program versus some others. But the other is, no matter what, to excel, whether you're at Purdue or you're at another university for this program, you really need buy-in from those in a 360. So whether that is your spouse, your significant other, your children, your boss, your friends. This is whatever program you go into, you've got a 1 to 2 years that is about to be drastically changed from what it is now, and having the support of those around you is invaluable.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for joining today.
you.
Good seeing you as always. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. Again, this will be posted. And if you think of a question either for myself or for Jen in the coming days or weeks, certainly feel free to reach out to any of us on the team. We'll pass it to Jen and can connect you with her, or if it's a question about the program, we can answer that as well. So again, thank you everyone for joining and wishing you a great rest of the day and rest of the week.